right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live broadcast on YouTube. Really excited to have everyone here tonight, and thank you for your time. We're talking today about reinventing yourself after TV news. I wanted to have this convo because it's definitely timely given the state of the industry right now. Also, I wanted to mark the release of my brand new book, Signing Off, a reflective guide on transitioning from TV news. It was just released last week, and in it, I talk about my journey through news and how I leverage those experiences now in this new world that I'm in tech and advertising tech. I'm really excited to be joined by our amazing panel here tonight. I'm joined by four incredible former journalists who are now killing it after reinventing themselves after TV news. So we're joined, let's go from the top right to the bottom. We got Britt Moore, who is at Edelman PR now. We have Aubrey Jackson, who is a former anchor and journalist from Tampa to BNC. She is now in the aviation industry. We have Joseph Pleasant, who I worked with in Jackson, Mississippi, and then he went on to Nashville at WKRN. And he is now heading the PIO office for the Nashville Fire Department. And last but not least, we have Maria Medina, who spent a lot of time at Capex in San Francisco in reporting there, and now she's also in the aviation industry. So thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, so let's go top. Let's start with you, Britt. Just tell everyone a little bit about your story and your journey about how you got to where you are now. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we mention, I should mention that we are going to be taking your questions too on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them for sure.
Okay, thanks so much, Dawn, for just getting all of us together. Yeah, like you said, so I'm Britt. I'm currently a senior editor, content creator at Edelman PR agency. For those not familiar, it's the largest public relations agency in the world. So I work with some major brands like Google, HP, Samsung, Johnson & Johnson, even Boeing, developing their marketing and social content and strategies. The cool thing about my job is I get to create TikToks. Most recently, if you scroll through the Google Arts and Culture TikTok page, you'll see my face. We get to create some really cool videos and inject the brand into some of the cultural trends that are happening. It's hard to believe I've only been out of news for less than 2 years. And I made the transition at the end of my last TV contract with King 5 News in Seattle, which is where I live now. I'll get into the significance of that station and that transition a little later, but that's a little about me.
A lot to cover, that's for sure. All right. And Aubrey.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Aubrey Jackson, former news anchor and reporter. After 6 years, I decided to end that chapter of my life of working in TV news in Tampa, Florida. So a top 10 market, which was a really significant opportunity for me. I had the chance to work in my hometown. So my parents got to wake up and watch me in the morning, and then had a really transformative experience in Tampa, to say the least. And so now my love of travel is what I am paid for and get to do every day. And it is so divine and purposeful. And I love being able to use the skills that I acquired in the newsroom over into the world of aviation and work with journalists every single day. And I couldn't be happier.
Divine and purposeful. I love that. All right now. All right. And we got Joseph.
Yeah, I'm Joseph Pleasant. I was in television news for 12 years in a number of markets. But my last market was here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I worked at WKRN for 7 years, and I ended my career in television here as a anchor investigative reporter, and now work for the Nashville Fire Department and Nashville Office of Emergency Management. And so my job covers pretty much anything you can imagine when it comes to emergency response, as well as long-term emergency responses like the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as special events here in Nashville. It's been a blessing to have this new chapter because I'm still using a lot of the skills I had when I worked in news in a different way. But I've been out of the business now for almost 6 years. So I have a little bit more time on the other side of the camera, and I'm just so happy to be here to share my experiences with you all.
Yeah. And, I hope that that's what this will be. I hope it's empowering for folks who are in the industry and just thinking about getting out. I hope, you'll definitely learn a lot from all these stories. And Maria?
Well, first of all, I just want to say congratulations, Dawn. So proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, like you said, my last media job was in San Francisco at the CBS station over there, KPIX. I was in news for almost 20 years. I'd say about 17 years. I actually started off wanting to be a print reporter and then transitioned into TV and was there for quite some time. I actually am going to be celebrating my 1-year anniversary of being outside of news next month, actually in just a few weeks. So just out of TV news. I'm a rookie in this industry, but I work in aviation, and I'm in charge of external and internal communications. And I'm just really excited to talk about this topic because, transitioning has just been such just an interesting experience. And I know that there are so many people out there that are also transitioning and they have lots of questions. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, and we all have our own transition stories too, and why, what made us get out of the industry. So I guess I'll open up with that. Like for anyone who wants to answer it, what was the final straw for you, or what made you want to rethink your career and get out of news?
Well, mine was a little dramatic, so I'll just kind of get mine out of the way. I left basically at the height of COVID, and the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're seeing this a lot more in different TV markets, but in San Francisco particularly, there was a lot of violence against the media. So we were being robbed, all the time. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. And the last straw for me really was when we had a security guard who was protecting one of our colleagues at a different station. He was murdered during a robbery gone bad. And so that was really traumatizing for me and for a lot of my colleagues. And you actually saw a lot of people a lot of journalists leaving the industry after that happened. You're just never the same when you know somebody who, even if he wasn't a reporter, he was still part of the news family because he was with us, all the time. When you see that happening so close to your family in your backyard, it's very traumatizing.
Yeah, and the issues in San Francisco are well documented.
Right.
I still can't believe you guys had full-time bodyguards. Like that's just...
and not just guards, but armed guards.
Yeah. No. Oh, geez. Well, thanks for sharing that. And two, I think one of the great things about this panel too, I know for this is probably the first time that many of you were speaking out and telling your stories. So thank you for sharing them here on this YouTube channel. Anyone else want to sound off on that, Britt?
Yeah. So my transition mentally happened, I think, a few years before I actually left the industry. I felt myself kind of becoming more numb, and a lot of it had to do with just my mental health. And I thought, the next station, it will be better. The next city will be better. And then when I finally landed at my dream station, and I was still sad and not feeling fulfilled, I thought, okay, I guess it's really time for me to assess what's next. And I think the final point for me to really make that decision was during COVID. And particularly in Seattle, the protests were very difficult to cover and very violent in some ways. And as a Black journalist covering news during that period, I felt myself just wanting to shrink. I felt I was carrying so much weight, and I didn't really know how to release all of that. And it just became too much. And there was a particular incident when I was sent to a breaking news story downtown Seattle. And I remember doing my live shots back to back to back, come home. And I remember looking at the web story and watching my live hit. And I don't remember being at that scene. I was so disconnected and not present, that I was just kind of going through the motions and not really there. And for me, I was like, I gotta go. And so I wanted to make the switch soon after that.
Yeah. And I love this focus on mental health. I mean, I know in my lifetime, I've never seen so much normalizing of mental health. And it's just so refreshing to see. And I love, and I appreciate that you guys are very vulnerable and open about that. And I think it's incredible.
Yeah. I have to say, Britt, hearing your testimony really makes the way I've felt over the years. I feel seen, and I feel like the way that I have felt is validated, because I never really knew how to ever express that I was never really present in my market, emotionally and physically, because we were there. But then there were times where you would always think about the next. Even if you were in a 2-year, 3-year contract, that first year and a half, you're already on to where am I going next? I have to get my tape ready? I have to do all these things. So as much as you want to connect to your community or really be immersed in the area that you are constantly thinking about the next place. And so I would feel that pretty periodically and think, even when I got to my hometown or when I got to my dream station, just like Britt, I'm thinking, is this me? Like, you start to internalize it and say, maybe like I'm the problem. Like, what is going on here? And you think that it's only you feeling that or experiencing that. And for me, what really made me decide that I wanted to step away, because a lot of what made me stay longer than I needed to was a mixture of fear and ego, because I began to think that if I put this mic down, will my voice carry? Will people care what I have to say? Will I have a platform? Do I matter if these call letters don't follow my name on screen or off? Do I have any value? And so what I had to do at that moment is really self-assess and check in with myself, because it really was scary and really sad to see that I had put so much of my personal value and my personal brand into my profession, so much so that I couldn't separate the two. And anytime someone will ask me, new journalist or someone who's been in the game for a while, I always say, as much as you can't have work-life balance in the TV game, you really have to find a way to separate professional and personal, because I stopped wanting to sacrifice my peace personally to be successful professionally. And so I stepped away because I just didn't want to sacrifice that anymore.
Oh, I love it. Y'all are preaching, honey. Okay.
And can I just add, Aubrey, on what you said, the identity piece, because there is this process you have to go through, because you are, Britt Moore, call letters after this. That's how you introduce yourself. And so you have to go through some sort of transition, because even now I have friends that are still in TV and go out to dinner and they're getting recognized and they're like, hey, and it's like, wait a minute, but I was Britt on King 5. You don't remember me? But it took me some time to come to grips. Like, I'm good. That's okay. That was one part of my life, but I am still Britt.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just had to add that. Yeah.
Did you experience
I was gonna say, yeah, I still get recognized in Nashville, so I don't know about that. But I did, like, something that Britt said resonated with me, because, and obviously I've been out of the business now for 5.5 years, but that same feeling of feeling numb, that same feeling of feeling like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. And also for me, I realized that I was leaving time on the table with my loved ones. I was having nieces and nephews. I was having friends get married. I was having people who were passing away. And I was still being holden to this notion that if it happened in November, May, July, or February, then we just could not do it. And as I really started to look at it, and then I started to really look at where the business was going and the things that I valued about being a reporter, enterprise reporting, investigative reporting, and looked at how those things were being watered down, I knew that it was no longer what I wanted to do. And so for me, I clearly remember the exact moment when I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I had worked on an enterprise story with one of my photographers that I'd loved working with, but there was breaking news in another city. And it was an officer involved shooting. It was breaking news. And I remember being in the car after, scrapping the story because we have to go there, and sitting there and thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want my day to be upended by something that I can't control. But more importantly, I really started to take an inventory of what I was getting back from this business I had given so much to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at that, and then I looked at what I was sacrificing in my personal life, I realized it was time to start thinking about making a change. That change happened about a year and a half before I actually got out of the business, because I did need that time to really make sure it was right for me, and then really let the universe say, yes, it is, and look for the right opportunity. But for me, it definitely was about not leaving time on the table with your loved ones, because let's be honest, the TV newsroom will take every second away from you they can, and it will not give it back to you. In fact, they'll ask you to work extra.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up too. My father passed away last year, and I tell you, one of the hardest parts and like just dealing with that and healing from it was just like kind of getting over this guilt I had for I hadn't been home since college, like in terms of living there, and I missed holidays, his birthdays, and and in a way, I think for me, like that kind of kept me in the industry too. Like I sacrificed all this stuff, and now I'm gonna give it up, like and it's like it's just it all comes together. So, I think too, like one of the things about the industry that keeps people in, it's like this is our passion. For a lot of us, I knew I wanted to do this since I was a kid. I mean, for you guys, how did you square giving up that dream?
The same for me. I wanted to be a news reporter since I was 5. And honestly, I had to come to terms with this was just one dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I can have several dreams. And yes, I worked so hard to reach this point in my life, point in my career. But like, if it's not making me happy anymore, that's okay. And it's okay to let it go. And so I had to come to terms with that before I even told my parents, because I know sometimes it's hard for the parents because they're used to say, oh, my kid is a reporter at this station. There's a lot of that. And I didn't want my feelings to be swayed. I wanted to be firm in my decision. And then I would tell everyone, this is what I'm doing, because you have to be good with you, because it's so much of your identity. I wanted to make sure I would be happy outside of the business. And I had to start reaching out to people outside of the business to see how their transition was. Dawn, I'd be calling you. How are you feeling? And so I needed some of that reassurance as well.
Yeah. And that's a hard part too, because like, I don't want to be that friend who's like, get out the industry, get out, and it's like, but I am over here like, oh, really? Y'all dealing with that? Oh, Lord. So.
I mean, Dawn, that's what you said to me. I reached out to you before I left. I wanted to know, how is it on the other side? Is it really worth leaving? Because, a lot of us worked in these really small markets to get to where we were, and we sacrificed a lot to get there. And so to walk away from that, and Britt, what you said, it really is a part of your identity, but it's, not just the community, how they see you, but it's how your family sees you. Even like, I was even kind of concerned talking to my husband about it. That's who he knew me as, that was part of who he married. And so it's a really kind of sad reality, though, that you have to look at it that way, that you have to say, I'm going to close this chapter and I'm not 100% excited. I'm actually kind of scared to leave an industry that is so toxic. I know it's toxic, but why is it so hard to leave? And a lot of us, I know a lot of people, a lot of journalists who've left, they kind of compare it to like an abusive relationship. You need to leave, but you continue to stay for X, Y, and Z. And, just kind of circling back to what you said, Dawn, about, your father passing away. I think, when I started reflecting back on, is this the right move for me? One of the things that I thought about was when my son was 5 years old, he was in kindergarten, and it was May, and there was a Mother's Day event. And I had to tell him, I'm so sorry, I can't make it to your Mother's Day event, because, how do you explain to a child it's May sweeps? But we had, a policy where you could not take any time off. I was brand new to the market, big market. I had to prove myself. And I said, my boss is just, she's not going to be happy if I skip work. And he looked at me, 5 years old, and he said, I think you need to get a new boss. And I wish I would have listened to that at 5, when he was 5 years old. because I just had missed so many of those special moments because I continued to sacrifice for a career that really did not give anything back to me.
Yeah, no. And
I will say from my perspective, though, that sacrifice, though, that we all made, the fruits of that are now coming out because there are skills that you have. There are instincts that you have. There are things you bring that are highly specialized about what news taught us. It's almost like we're engineers because we know how certain things work. And I think for me, I look at the bright side of saying, yes, I let one thing go, but I was at Unity one year in DC, and I was talking to a national anchor, and we were talking, and he asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, he goes, "No, when someone asks you what you want to do, you need to let them know what you want to do." And he said, growing up, his family always told him that all dreams have addresses. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned through his experience is addresses can change. Mm-hmm. And the job I have now, I would not have imagined how happy I am in it when I was sitting in that newsroom wondering if I was going to be able to get that next job. My moment of knowing that I was really like not trying to go to another market was thinking, okay, if I go to this next market, I'm gonna have to start on mornings or weekends and work myself up. And it's like, do I really want to be standing on the side of the interstate in 20-degree weather? Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's time for me to find where my home is and make my home work for me.
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect segue. I'd love to go one by one and just talk about how you're leveraging your skills as a journalist, everything that you learned in journalism in your role today.
I guess I'll start. So many skill sets, and that's something I had to really sit down and think about and talk to other friends about, translating those skills into the corporate space, in my case, in the PR world. So storytelling, that is universal. And once you have that skill set, I feel like you can do almost anything. You know how to tell a story, you know who to find, you know how to define the character. And I think that is hugely needed, especially in the corporate space. And so that's what I'm doing in my day-to-day job. I am essentially helping brands tell the stories that they want to tell, find particular messaging for different social campaigns, and identifying those nuggets that really will get people interested. I know in news, we talked about like headlines and what's the lead and all of that. And that mindset has helped me elevate my storytelling in the corporate world. And besides storytelling, I think, Joseph, you mentioned that instinct. And some things I just can't explain, but it's because we've been in a newsroom and we know how to move quickly and we know, how to identify certain things, that I'm able to actually just be super efficient day to day in the corporate world, because I feel like we were doing 5 to 10 jobs. And
paid for one.
Getting paid for one. So now it's just having the ability to communicate that, hey, okay, I can come up with a social strategy. I can help you develop this. I can put this presentation together. We may not have done that in the newsroom per se, but we have that skill set because we know how to put a story outline together. Essentially, that's a presentation. And Don's been great in helping me translate those skills that I didn't even really know I had because they were so instinctual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one thing I think that's really helped me personally. Thankfully, my boss, she's a former newsie as well. And so like, I just got handed a new project and she's like, oh, well, think of it like this in news terms. And I'm like, oh, girl, I got you. You know what I mean? Like, it's perfect. And two, before we continue, I just want to mention too, like, it's not perfect anywhere. Like, I still have stressful days. I still have days where I'm pissed and all that, but I have not had a single day outside of news that was like my worst day in news. Like, I honestly have not ever reached that level of toxicity, that level of just, you know what I mean? So I just want to be clear about that. Like, it's not perfect anywhere. Right. It's not like, we still have struggles. We still have challenges, but so I just want to make that clear. Sorry, Aubrey.
Yes, no, I was going to agree with you too, Don, because there's stressful days on both sides of it, actually. Working in aviation, I mean, there could be a slight change in the wind and your whole day can go a whole different direction. And I equate that to storm chasing or weather watch, and that's how it is in news. And you kind of know to put your your boots on and get your jacket, and you're going outside. You kind of already have the instinct, so you go into that mode even if you're not having to physically stand outside and say, oh, if you see behind me, or do as I say, not as I do. Like, everyone knows how it goes. But I've had days, even in my present role, where I have caught myself saying I still would take this 10 times over the nights where I have seriously probably cried or had to just really soul search to make it through a live shot. Like, it's been some really tough times. And I look at how I'm able to problem solve or handle crisis moments, if you will, so chill and calm. And you would think I do yoga every morning. It's not the case, but I'm just so grateful, because when you look back at the storms that you've come through, you're on the other side and you're just like, wow, I see everything we've gone through. We needed to, in order to be so centered and calm to handle a lot of the situations that we go through now. So the role that I have is for overseeing internal and external communication. So I'm storytelling, I'm crafting with reporters, and really helping them in a way where I can speak their language. And that's what I think has really been my unique identifier, is that whenever I'm pitching a story, to whether it's to an assignment editor or to a reporter directly, I'm already telling them your sound bites. I'm already telling you the B-roll you can get. I'm already telling you how this is going to be great overall for your A block, your B block, or your lifestyle show. Yeah. I'm really painting the picture and allowing them to come out for once. And it's a hand holding almost. And if you're MMJing, no problem. I was helping a reporter who's a good friend of mine now get her stand up. I'm like, girl, stand right there. Let me fix the camera right here, all of that. And I'm just like, yep, I'll hold the mic right here. So it seems like you have your own nap pops. And it's fun because old habits die hard. It's still in us. And I think I get to kind of live through them, even when I'm working with them on the other side of the camera.
And baby, you could not have paid me enough to pick up a camera when I was in news, but I shoot everything myself now.
Everything.
It too, don't be afraid to use your fresh eyes as power. I think about, in my job at Alaska Airlines, which was my first job out of news, they loved the fact that I was new to tech. And so as I was learning tech, part of my job was to translate the work that the tech teams were doing to the rest of the airline. So it was great that I wasn't in the weeds and knew all the tech stuff, so don't be afraid to use that as a selling point too, as you're looking to get into a different industry or something like that. So awesome. All right, Joseph.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue, because I want to say, for me, it was a curiosity I had as a reporter. I love being an enterprise reporter. Obviously, with the fire department and the Office of Emergency Management, they're going to be actual breaking news incidents that happen. So those tools work well. But on days that nothing really big is happening, I was able to use my curiosity about the department to tell stories to the public that our personnel take for granted. Things that they do every single day that they don't believe are a big deal. The public's like, so that's how that works. And so for me, my driving force was my curiosity, but also being able to say, oh, I've taught people that's how that works. And that served me so well when I first made the transition. The other thing that is really good is knowing how the business is going now. One of the things I've noticed is in my market that they're hiring younger and people are not staying as long. And so we have reporters who are turning over a lot faster in this market, which is a top 30 market, than in past years. And being able to articulate to a newer reporter that quick elevator, speech of how things work builds a lot of trust with them, but it also helps us kind of control the misinformation that can kind of get out there, right? Because as a journalist, when you have a lot of experience, or at least more experience, when somebody is blowing smoke or if someone is not a great source. But when you're a young reporter, you may not. And so that skill set of knowing that gut instinct, but also knowing how to, in a way, mentor the newer reporters has really served me well, in the sense of, I want you to be successful, And if you're successful, we're successful because we both have a job to do and we both want to tell stories. But every day is not going to be a two-alarm fire. So let's work well together. So on the day when there's no two-alarm fire, there's a story we can tell together that gets you a pat on the back in the newsroom, but also gets something positive from our organization.
And too, Joseph, I love that you're like kind of two steps ahead of the reporters too, because you know the tricks, you know, like you have that sight on, you know, we were talking about this in the pre-show, but like how you can anticipate what they're really trying to get to sometimes, you know.
Right. And that's a powerful tool, and especially when you're going to go into municipality or public government like I am, because a lot of department heads, a lot of people who manage the departments feel really skittish about journalists. Maybe they've had a couple of bad stories, or maybe they've had a bad experience. But being able to reassure them of, I think this is what's happening, and or be able to say, we're not doing that for this reason, it builds in the value of you being there, because it's not about you being cynical or skeptical, but it's about knowing I worked at that station. And that's one of the things about working in a market where you actually worked as a reporter, is because you do typically know the personalities of the people working in newsrooms, good, bad, and the ugly. And that also is very valuable, not to mention when you've been on television there, you do bring a certain amount of trust to your position as, in my case, a public information officer, but in other cases as a communications director, because you had to build that trust over so many years as a reporter.
Yeah. And if there's anything that's needed, it's definitely good PIOs, because we all have horrible experiences with some of them, that's for sure. Maria?
Yeah, you know, this is a great question because, Dawn, I'm sure you've, you know, gotten this question as journalists are saying, hey, Dawn, how did you get out of the industry? Like, how did you convince these private, you know, companies or, you know, public entities that I can actually do work outside of news? And so, you know, I always say it's our storytelling, what Britt said. You know, Britt helps companies storytell. I work for a company and I help mine for stories. I tell them, you know what, this is a great story, or these are the kind of stories we should be looking for to really kind of help elevate our brand and put them, you know, in the spotlight. But I think one thing I want to bring up that, you know, I brought from news to the role that I'm doing right now is it's a strength, but it's also a weakness. And I don't know how all you guys feel about this, but again, I'm kind of new, so it's really hard to slow down. I am going 100 miles an hour still, like I'm still in a newsroom. It's hard for me to give up the control, you know, that I used to have as a reporter, you know, and not because I was a control freak, but because you were forced to be your own producer. You had to gather the elements, you had to report, you had to manage your photographer and manage the time and back time your day and just do all these things just to get on TV for a minute and a half. And so in my role now, I'm always like just doing 10, 12 things all at once. And my colleagues are like, do you need any help? Are you good? Like, I feel like you're doing a lot. And I'm always like, no, I'm good. I got this. And I think it's really just kind of, you know, I can do it. And I do enjoy doing that because I've been doing it for so long. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what, I need to learn how to just kind of slow down and really look at my work and really kind of say, you know what, actually, let's tag team and let's work on this together. So it's one thing that I'm still learning to do.
That definitely gets better, Maria, I will say. Like I was the same way when I first started too.
Good.
But then, no, because you kind of miss that adrenaline. Like, you know what I mean? Like now, like I try not to do several things at one time. Like, you know, like I've totally acclimated to this new world, if you will, you know.
I'm waiting to slow down a little bit. So,
Well, I was going to say one of the things also about slowing down and sharing the work is it helps build relationships with your colleagues and let them build a relationship with you. One thing, because I'm the same way, I'm very task oriented and I'll walk in the door with 20 things to do and say, let's get all 20 done. But something I really started doing was in my iPhone notes, if an idea of something I needed to do popped up, I put it on there as a task list and I would check off my tasks, but I would never get mad at myself for not getting through all the tasks. because you're naturally going to take care of what is most important first, because that's what we did as reporters.
Yeah.
And then everything else, you can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the mentality that I need. I'm like, oh, I need to get all this done right now. But I think that's a really good point, because when you do go into, when you get out of news into like a corporate job, it really is kind of building those relationships with your colleagues that maybe you didn't really do as much in news, right? Because the producers were in the newsroom and you were with your photographer in the truck, but, were you communicating, were you really working together as a team? It does feel very separate, what you're doing. But when you're working outside of news, it really is kind of you have to work with a team and you have to build relationships with your colleagues. You can't just do it on your own. So that's another thing that I'm having to learn. I am a team player, though. I am a team player. It's just learning to just give up some of the things that I'm doing.
No, it's tough.
Yeah.
And I echo what Maria was saying, because what you're experiencing is something that I actually, because right after TV, I went straight into my healing journey, because I knew there was a lot that I needed to unpack, and something that my therapist had pointed out to me is that wanting to take on so many things at once is actually a trauma response, and something that I had to unpack, because we took so much on in fear that if at any point something was pointed out to us or seen as wrong, we were going to have to take the fault for it. So why not put everything on my back so I can make sure that no one has the power to take my power away, because I hold all of it. And then you go into a space where collaboration and working together and handling things in a team environment, a true team environment, you're almost scared to give a little bit of the workload, because you're just like, well, what comes with that? Can you trust it? So there's a lot more so mentally and emotionally that you have to unpack when you decide to step away and really be able to pinpoint it. Because at first you're thinking, oh, maybe I just don't know how to work with others. It's not that at all. For the longest time, you never allowed yourself to. You were afraid to. And you weren't in an environment that was conducive for you to have that collaborative spirit. So until you're in a space where you can, because I saw it for myself, I had full-blown anxiety attacks, but just said that I didn't have enough Red Bull and thought that's the problem. I'm just sleepy. No, they were full-blown anxiety attacks in fear of what my ND was going to say, what my assignment editor was going to say. Is my producer going to be mad? Am I going to make slot? And then you go into a space where all you need to do is just raise your hand and say, hey, can I have the other person help me, or another team? There's other teams established to help, in the same way that in the aviation industry, there's so many co-teams there to support that you're almost overwhelmed. You're like, everyone can help me. So it's a beautiful thing. And it's because we're still so new into the game, Maria, but I think we're in for an amazing experience of a true collaborative environment that we've never experienced before.
Yeah, I definitely am still healing, and I think it'll take a while.
Yeah. And Britt, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, no, to highlight, no problem, to highlight everything that's been said. Having different resources, that's what I wasn't used to in the newsroom. And so when it comes to completing projects, and that weight that you both were talking about that we carried as reporters, now I'm realizing, okay, we have DXI folks, we have teams who can help us put that together. Whereas my reporter brain is going into like stressing myself out, researching everything, doing it on my own. And I realized I had moments, because I've had bad moments too, where I've even called Dawn, I'm in tears, I'm stressed out, I don't know what I'm doing. And all it just takes is a moment to breathe. Like, hey, we have the resources. You are not going to fail. You are still learning. It is okay. You do not have to finish everything. Setting those boundaries in your life, just because we had to finish certain things in the news world, that is not how the corporate space is necessarily running. And it's okay. And not feeling anxiety that I haven't done enough. Sometimes I just don't have more to give, and I'm doing my job for that day, but it's okay if I'm not going above and beyond, because I know tomorrow I can show up in a different way and have more energy and really get, do what I need to do. Having that grace. And I don't think I was allowed that grace for myself in the news business.
No, for sure. And two, like I think one of the most liberating things about being out of news is this. I feel it. It's like this sense of agency that I have that I never felt in news, ever, ever. Professionally and personally, I just feel like I'm in control of my life now, and it's been just one of the biggest, like, it's been so liberating for me. Does that resonate with any of you guys too?
Yeah, it does. I can kind of speak from the point of not being married, not having kids, and seeing a lot of colleagues or people in the newsroom that were news anchors as I was a reporter working my way up to the desk, and I saw this concern of, can I get a babysitter in order to do the 5 and the 6? Can I go on this trip? Can my husband pick up the kids? There were so many questions that I had while seeing it, single and unmarried, wondering if I wanted to enter that season of my life, could I do it with news and do it in a way where I'm not more stressed than I already am, and I don't even have a goldfish? Like, how am I going to be able to balance all the things, and not even getting into how difficult it was even to date, because you really, Drake said it, I'm here for a good time, not a long time, but it truly was the truth, because my contract ends in another few months and I got to go. And a lot of people just don't really understand that, or think, well, why can't you just stay here? Well, because the next market is where I got to go. It's what I have to do. And so you really didn't know how to find your roots, how to plant your feet, because you're always thinking that next market might be the better thing for me, or that next news director is going to be the one, or whatever the case may be. You really just don't know. You're always thinking about the next. And it was so difficult to even just find a way to have a thriving feeling personally, because you're chasing so much professionally.
Yeah.
Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary and finite, because the deal is coming up and they're going to call you in and try to either lowball you or tell you why you ain't worth it. But I'll let you sign again. But just know that you're not going to anchor. I think something that is so important is the mental health aspect of it. And I see a therapist, and one of the things that has helped so much is understanding that no, you weren't crazy. It was a bad place to work. It's a toxic environment. And now what we're seeing, especially as people of color, is the deck was really stacked against us in these newsrooms. There really were news managers that were doing things to keep us from ascending for reasons that had nothing to do with our skill. And unpacking all of that, and unpacking the fact that we worked really, really hard while we watched some of our counterparts not work nearly as hard, who kept getting promoted, and thinking you're crazy. And now realizing you weren't crazy at all. You were just being discriminated against. You were not being valued. That is something that goes deeper than just getting out of the business. That goes to a place of your self-worth. Because when you go into television, because you work so hard to get there, yes, being that anchor, being that news reporter is important to your identity. But no, you earned it. You earned that place. You earned that spot. And when you walk away from it, at least for me, it took me a while to say, it's okay that I'm no longer Joseph Pleasant from WKRN News 2. That's okay. I'm still Joseph Pleasant. And over time, I started to enjoy that my name belonged to me. I no longer was in a contract where they could do what they wanted with my likeness. I was no longer in a situation where my name was always tied to them because they had the right to do what they wanted to. That meant so much to me. And now, almost 6 years out, I look back and say, why did I stay so long?
Yeah, no. I love that you brought up mental health too, because it's definitely something I've been very open about, in my journey outside of news. And talk about how we were talking about this before we went live, just that mental block, like kind of deprogramming yourself from the toxicity of the industry. Talk about that a little bit, and maybe some impacts on your mental health since you've been out.
I'm curious if this is a shared experience with everyone. It took therapy for me to learn how to answer questions out of neutrality. I could not speak about politics. I almost couldn't tell you like a favorite hobby or something I as an individual liked to do or liked outside of making sure I didn't sway. If you were asking me where I stood on a certain issue, it was always going to come back to, but if everyone feels this is okay, I had to make sure you were comfortable with my response, even if we're just out getting coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah.
I had to deprogram that to say, well, what do you like? What do you enjoy? Do you have a hobby other than just saying it's emceeing in the community and going to a few galas? What do you like to do and who are you? And it took me going to therapy to find that out again and reintroduce me to myself, because I had so freely given it up in hopes that my value was going to be seen by being on camera.
Yeah. Baby, don't look at my Twitter now, honey, because I'm unapologetically Black, gay, everything, honest about everything, honey. And
No,
it's motivating to have that voice, finally.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, Aubrey. Even when it comes to just what I posted on social media, how I interacted with social media, I had to like really kind of get out of that thinking. I'm like, wait a minute, I have an opinion. I can say this. I can drop this GIF if I want to, or this meme, and show up as myself fully and completely. Dawn, to go to your point about like some of the mental health aspects, I know, and you kind of helped me process this along the way. Towards the end of my TV career, I had no idea that I was suffering from severe anxiety and severe depression. I would go to sleep crying, wake up crying. I would have an immediate like stomach knot as soon as I woke up, because I knew the stress of the day was coming. And even when it came to my live shots, I had never been nervous before. And then all of a sudden I felt like my heart was going to come out of my chest. And I remember having that conversation with Don, and I'm like, I just don't know what to do. Like, I'm trying to sleep. I tried all these things. He's like, well, why don't you talk to someone and figure out your options? And especially as a Black person, and telling my mom, I think anti-anxiety medication is what I need to take. And my mom, that was a whole other conversation, but I had to do what, I knew would help me through that period. And it was like so helpful, because I was going down a road and I had no idea that I was stuck in it. And I think it was a lot of things. Yes, it was the business. It was me being so unhappy. It was me not being fulfilled in my personal life. And that ties into my job, because I felt like I was on all the time and I wanted a break. And so I advise people to really tap into themselves. I think therapy is amazing, and figuring out how you can begin to live your story. I often tell people, like, I got tired of telling everyone else's stories because I wasn't even living my own.
And I will say, like, I think for me, once you start getting clear in that way is when you really start making the move to say, I'm ready to leave TV. Is when you really kind of get centered in who you are. Don recommended a book to me that I love called You Are a Badass. And I've read it. And that book was so transformative, because it really took away this notion that you have to stay in this bad place in order to prove that you're good. No, you don't. In fact, the universe sometimes is going to push you by all means necessary out of a situation. And when you finally accept the fact that, yes, I will do that, then things will get better. And then even with meditation, Deepak Chopra has the 21 days of abundance. And that just has changed my life so much, because when we come from a place of abundance versus scarcity, we realize that little job I was doing, I don't want to do it no more. That's fine, because there's something else out there for me that's going to fit what I want. And I trust it's going to fit what I want. And so for me, it was the process of recognizing what the job was doing to me and finding myself when I realized it's time to go. It's really, really time to go. Even beyond that live shot where I was like, I don't want to do it no more. I got to a point, and Don, I'll tell you, I said, yeah, I got to go.
Yeah. Or are you going to pull that what that girl in Alaska did? I quit on the live shot.
Right.
Maria, any thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, this is hard because, I still am, healing from my time in TV news. But, by the end of it, I was dealing with severe depression for so many reasons. The last straw was the guard being murdered, but there were just so many reasons that we've talked about why I was so unhappy. But I just kept staying and staying because it was so hard to walk away, to the point where I was getting up every day and I was like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to work. And my husband was telling me, you are depressed. This is not worth it. You need to leave. And, I'm so much happier now that I'm outside of news, but I still have anxiety. I have anxiety when I'm in big crowds that I never used to have before. I'm the biggest social butterfly. I mean, I love being around people. But when somebody says, I want to go to a concert or something, I have like anxiety almost. And I know that that's because of what I went through in news, the protests that I covered, the times where I had to run behind the live truck because there were bullets flying. So you just, I think when you're young, you're like, this is such a great job. And oh my gosh, I can't wait till I'm in market 10 and everything. But when you start looking back at the career, the sacrifices that you've made for that career, I think that's when you start to realize, and that it really wasn't worth it. And no matter where you are, no matter what market you're in, whether it's a small market or a big market, when you get there, you are always told that you are replaceable and you are never enough. And it is just so embedded in you. You can do a great job on a story one day, but you better prove yourself the next day. Because if you mess up the next day, you're replaceable. And I still have that trauma even here. When I make a mistake, it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to replace me. Or why did I do that? And it haunts me all day. And so those are the kind of things that I'm having to learn to just let go. Because when I talk about it to like my MD, she's like, it's not a big deal. It's fine.
Yeah. No,
you're good. Why are you still thinking about that?
Yeah.
So those are some of the traumas that I'm still dealing with, but it's hard. It's really hard to shed when you've been in the business for a long time and you've been told you're not good enough.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I went through that today. I made a mistake on something and I was just like been beating myself up on it. And like my boss actually called me before this. Was like, are you okay? We just want to make sure. And so
and they would never do that in news. That's the thing, is that you would never get that call in news.
No. At all. And I love that you brought up the anxiety, especially around gun violence. It's been definitely one of the dominant stories in my post-news life. And just, I have a severe anxiety around gun violence. And I just really advocate for folks who are still in the industry, please start unpacking some of the experiences that you're going through, even if you're not going to get out of the industry, because I don't think my therapist told me it started impacting me because it was no longer my lifestyle. I was no longer going to mass shooting after mass shooting. So my brain was finally processing all of those experiences. So I'm definitely a big proponent for seeing a therapist and really starting to unpack some of the things that you're seeing, because it is secondhand PTSD without a doubt. So I'd love to wrap this up with just one by one, your advice to someone who might be just thinking about making a transition.
I would say sit with yourself and really make sure you feel good about whatever decision you make. If it's to stay in the business or if it's to make that transition out of the business, I think you have to be 100% good with your decision, because then all of that noise won't matter. And you are doing the best thing for you. Because at the end of the day, life is about thriving. It's not just about surviving. You deserve to enjoy your life.
Amen.
Yeah, I'll echo that and say that if you're thinking about stepping away or staying in the game, to honor your own timeline. Even if you're listening to this conversation and you're kind of still tussling with am I going to be valued if I step away, but I really know I need to step away, that you need to sit with yourself a little bit more. And one thing I would actually encourage those who are still kind of on that fence to do is to get a piece of paper and write down the things that you truly care about, that you value and that you love, and put it alongside what you're doing each day. And that is a way that I was actually able to kind of pull out how much I love travel and feel more at home when I'm away. And I built on that in my personal brand, which led me to my professional opportunity that I have now, because I had to reintroduce myself to what I love and what I care about and what's something that I would talk about or do every day and not get paid for it. And that's something that's really hard when a person is trying to decide, what do I do next? When this is something I've done this entire time. For me, it's all I ever knew. I went to school for it. It was my first job. I've done nothing else but TV. So I task you to really take that time to identify what you care about. So your next step is fulfilling and not draining. And you're finally going to choose yourself professionally when you go through that route.
And you never go wrong believing in yourself and choosing yourself, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Awesome.
Yeah.
Joseph?
I agree with both. Sit with yourself on your own timeline so that you know that when you make that decision, you won't have regrets about leaving or changing jobs because it's what you want to do. But then also have faith in knowing that the skill sets that you have as a reporter, especially the skill set you have of knowing how to tell a story, how to use video, how now to use, social media. Those are extremely, extremely valuable skills, and they can be used in a variety of industries that you're probably not even considering. And as you get closer to deciding whether or not you want to make that change, let people know that you're open. You're open to looking, and you just never know what opportunity may come. And then, just like any other job, when you went to a new newsroom, if you make that transition, work your tail off, show your value, work your butt off. But what you will find is your return is going to be a lot better, and you're going to be seen and acknowledged a lot sooner than you ever were in news, because you are valuable, and they will tell you you're valuable, and they will thank you for being there, and they will want you to stay.
Mm-hmm. And don't think you have to sacrifice pay either. Like, I spoke to somebody and she's like, I got to start at the bottom. I'm like, no, honey, you're an expert. Like, I know I've made more in every job since news, like since I, so don't think that you have to sacrifice pay or anything like that, because you don't. And stand firm in your worth and what you bring to the table. Yeah.
Exactly.
Maria?
Yeah, I mean, don't give up. It took me a while to find a job outside of TV news. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's the reality of it. It's difficult to sometimes to convince people that you can do the job outside of news. Sometimes people are looking at, oh, here's another journalist wanting to leave the industry, but you can do the job, believe in yourself. And the other advice that I'd like to give people thinking about leaving is, if you're still in the news industry, and whether you're unhappy or not, advocate for yourself. You are your best advocate. I told people that all the time when I was in the industry. Things would happen to them, and they would just kind of internalize it or talk about it amongst themselves. But really, you're not going to know whether it's right for you until you find your voice and you speak up for yourself and you see the responses from your management. And it's those responses, or the lack of responses, that will get you to that point where you say, you know what, this is not happening. Change is not happening. This industry is not for me. I need to leave because I'm not getting what I deserve. I'm not getting what I need from my employer.
And I just say dedicate. I'm a big energy person. So it's like, I just say, like, just once a week, like, just dedicate Saturday to like researching, like looking at other possibilities. And I think the universe will definitely meet you there for sure. So awesome. This was such a great conversation. I do want to plug real quick my book. Okay. Signing Off, a reflective guide on transitioning from TV news. It is available on Amazon, also on my website, nodmediaconsulting.com. Once again, nodmediaconsulting.com. Check it out, please. Give me your feedback on it. If you read it, definitely leave a review on Amazon as well, because that will help brother out. Also, I do want to mention, Aubrey, you offer some great services to Newsies as well.
Absolutely. Yes. So I have career choreography consulting, and this is a resource that I would have loved to have had during my season of just trying to navigate the world after news and really figuring out how to define my voice and hone in on the talents and skills that I had to really revamp my resume, to optimize my LinkedIn. And those are the services and the things that I'm focusing on one-on-one, more so than trying to help the masses, because it's a very individualized experience, and no one person's journey or desire for what they want to do after TV is the same. So Dawn will have a link available so you can schedule time on my calendar, and we're going to go through where you are right now in your journey and what I can do alongside you to get you to where you want to be.
Amen. And that too is something that I never had, that entrepreneurial kind of spirit mentality ever in news. And now, like last year, I started my own business. Like I'm really leaning into it. And it's like, I think this freedom has really opened up that for me and just expanded my horizons, if you will. Before we go to mention where each of the folks can find you on social, Britt.
Oh, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook at Britt Moorer, the extra ER.
Okay. And Aubrey, we got yours?
Yes, look at me. I'm already being so social. All of my handles are at I'm Aubrey Jackson, and I'm obsessed with TikTok. So Britt, I'm about to add you.
And Joseph?
Yeah, I'm at J Pleasant NFD on Twitter, and then Joseph Pleasant on Facebook.
Awesome. And Maria?
I had to look at my handles, but I am on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm on TikTok too much. My husband complains. But Maria Medina, Maria Sid Medina, I'm on all of it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you for being just so open and honest and vulnerable. I think it definitely resonates with folks. And so congratulations to each of you too. I'm so proud of you guys. And I think the best is yet to come for all of us. That's for sure.
And congratulations to you on the book.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. And thank you everyone for watching as well. Thanks everyone.